Hey everybody, welcome. I'm Romy Hill, and I'm a little discombobulated today, to tell you the truth. Anyway, I am here to talk about Peony Garden, which is the second shawl pattern from my Lace Lovers Club in 2023. So this live will stay here indefinitely. So if you weren't able to catch it, or if you only saw part of it, or if you want to go watch something again, it will be here for you. And thank you so much for joining me. I see people in the chat. It's so nice to see you. I know that you have a lot of time to take a look at this later on, so it's extra special to me when you hang out with me. So as always, there's a delay. And so that means that you'll see me about 7 seconds or so after I've actually said what I'm saying. And then if you ask me a question or anything in the chat, I will see that a little bit later. So there's some delay back and forth. Anyway, I am the designer behind Designs by Romy. And so this live again is for Peony Garden, and even if you aren't knitting Peony Garden at the moment, I hope you will kind of follow along and take a look at it. It looks complicated, but when you start doing it, I think it's not as complicated as you think it is. Anyway, hi everybody. We have people all over from Denmark too. So this is pretty exciting. So the first thing I'm going to do today is go over some of your questions. And there are a couple in the Ravelry group. And then if you have any questions you want to ask me while the live is going on, go ahead and put them in the chat and I will answer them. So I'll just be keeping kind of an eye on what everybody's saying in the chat. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to change over to my hands because I have a small error in here that I want to tell you about. And this is chart D. So I breezed right by this. I think like everybody who looked at this before it came out for you all breezed right by it, and I am so sorry. So in row 6 of chart D, there are 2 extra stitches that should not be there. That should actually look like this. So no stitches are added here. So this carries up right through here. And I will also change this on the pattern, but I just wanted to put that out there in case somebody was having any problems counting. So speaking of counting, let's take a look because one of the questions today was about counting. Someone was having problems counting chart E. So I'm just going to pull that out. So chart E is where we're starting to go from the circle and make it into a square. So let's take a look here. Up until this point, it's just been a circle. And chart E is where it starts to become a square. So that means that there are lots of increases. So there are lots, let me move this so it's easier to see. There are lots of increases right along here. So what we're doing is making 4 spines from that original circle. So there are extra increases right in here through the middle. So in this area right here. And there are quite a few increases. So that is so that the material will make sort of a point. And instead of having a circle, it starts turning into a square. So let's take a look here at what that looks like on the chart. So you can see right through here, there are quite a few increases. So there are lots of CDIs, lots and lots of extra yarn overs across here. So I like to increase in pattern, which means that instead of pairing up the increases and decreases, I will give you extra increases, but you won't really be able to see it in the pattern because it looks like it's part of the pattern. Okay, so this is what it looks like. So you can see right across here, this is where a lot of those increases are happening. So sometimes that makes it a little bit more difficult to count. And there was someone who was having issues counting somewhere between rows 5 and 7. So I was taking a look here, and first I want to talk about how to count, and then what happens if it looks like it's a little bit off. So let's take a look at row 5 here. So I'm just going to count in this area here how many stitches are that we end up with. So it's 5, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Well, actually, I should have done this. Did you know, by the way, I wanted to remind you that these colored swatches here are sets of 5. So there's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and then 31, 32, 33, 34. So in this little area here, after row 5 and after row 6, you end up with 34 stitches. So now let's take a look up here at row 7 and see how many stitches row 7 uses across here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. Okay, so we end up with 34 stitches down here, and then this uses 33. So let's take a look over here and see if we have used how many stitches over here we've used. So we may find that extra stitch. So down here on row 5, before this little repeat line, we had 4 stitches. Up here on row 7, we're going to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here we're using an extra stitch, and over here we're using 1 less stitch. So this works out. So sometimes you're going to come to an area where you see a lot of no stitch markers, and it's a little, can be confusing because you're going to end up with an extra stitch before you see these no stitch markers. But this is just there to make the motifs look correct. So in other words, just pretend this isn't here. So you actually do have the number of stitches that you need before you get to this little red line here. So I hope that helps. And let me see. Okay. Hi from Haifa. That is so cool. I love it when our friends from overseas join in. And I actually got a time when you all could be here, which is so great. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. And also, if you were unsure how I was counting, so for row 5 down here, I counted the number of squares. So this is how many stitches I ended up with. And in row 7, I did not count the number of squares. I counted the number of stitches that each stitch symbol would use to create the stitch. So, and that's how you figure out if you have the same number of stitches that you ended with is the same number of stitches that you will need to complete your row. So in other words, this symbol here is an SSK and it takes 2 stitches. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because a knit 2 together also takes 2 stitches. And then this yarn over does not take a stitch. So, and going on through here, there are yarn overs added, and particularly as we get up into this area further up here, and actually down here as well, you can see all of these yarn overs with no decrease corresponding. So even though there are a lot of little symbol squares, you aren't going to need that many stitches to complete this row, just because most of these are yarn overs, and so you don't need an existing stitch to create one. So hopefully that's a little helpful. I hope so. Alrighty, so I have one other thing. I know that several people were having some problems starting this, so I'm just going to do a quick little thing here. I like to start with double pointed needles, but you don't necessarily have to start with double pointed needles. So I'm going to do my Emily Ocker's cast on, and I'm not going to put it onto double pointed needles. So here I'm just going to cast on 8, even though this is 12. So I'm just going to do my Emily Ocker, and then I am going to show you how you can start with 2 circular needles instead. So here is 4 of these, and hopefully this is helpful even for those of you who have used the double pointed needles. This is another option for you in the future. I do not tend to use magic loop on lace because for me it really deforms the stitches so much that I just don't like the way it works. Okay, so we have 8 stitches here. I'm going to slide this down to the other end and kind of pull this a little bit. Okay, so if you've never knit with 2 circular needles before, you can do any length at all. So I have 2 different lengths actually, and I have 2 different needle lengths. So you can see one is from a sock set and the other one is just from a plain everyday kind of set of needles. So remember when you do Emily Ocker that your stitches are going to be mounted with the right leg in back and the left leg in front. So you're going to be slipping purlwise through the back loop. And I'm going to, instead of doing 4 needles, I'm just going to put these onto 2 needles. So here is my first needle that I've put this onto. And now I'm going to take my other circular needle and slip those last 4 stitches through the back loop purlwise onto the next needle. So I'm going to pull this tight. So now I have my 2 needles ready. So since this can be a little bit tricky at first, I like to just take a pin and I'm going to mark the beginning of my round. Okay, so here are my 2 needles, and all of the stitches are going to stay on their respective needle. So for instance, these 4 stitches are going to stay on this needle, and these 4 stitches are going to stay on that second needle. Okay, so since we're starting a round, I'm going to take my working yarn and I've pulled that needle through so that all of my stitches are just on the cable. Now I'm going to start right here with my working circular needle. And I'm just going to pretend that I'm doing a pattern. So when I first start on a new needle, I just give that a little bit of a tug. And now I'm going to work these around. So here is the start here. So I'm going to keep, because I started here with a stitch, I'm doing a stitch, a yarn over, a stitch, a yarn over. I'm going to put the yarn over on that needle, and then I'm going to pull it through and start on my second circular needle. And so here's my second one. It helps to have different colored cables or different needles or something like that. And that will help you keep kind of keep an eye. So I had a question from Jennifer. Can you do the Emily Ocker cast on left-handed and it still work? Yes, I think so. Um, let's see. So my suggestion, if you're a left-handed knitter, is to take my video and mirror it, and I think that that might help you be able to do it, at least to see like how it should look when you're doing it left-handed. Okay, so I have my yarn over at the end here, and now I'm just going to continue. And just like before, I give that a little bit of a tug because the yarn tends to get looser right at the join. And just going to continue on here. Okay, so I'm at the end of that first round, and now I'm going to pull my needle through again. And that one is going to rest. And here is the beginning of my round. I'm going to get my other needle ready to work. And this round is just going to be a knit round. So I'm just going to knit across these stitches. So this may be easier for you to do than wrestling double points if you're not very used to using them. This may be much easier. So let me get these, got sort of, there we go. So let's get around to the end of this round and I will show you what it looks like. So again, this isn't the pattern. I only cast on 8 stitches, but it is very similar. It's very similar to what you will be doing in the Peony Garden pattern. Okay, so now you can see I have my 2 needles here. Let's just move these. So here's my start. Now, once you have gotten a little bit further along here, you can just pull. I'm going to pull this through to the other side. You can just pull the tail in the center and closes that center right up. So hopefully that will help. Okay, so Jennifer says you're a right-handed knitter, but crochet left-handed. Okay, so Emily Ockers is basically just like a magic loop, I think it's called in crochet. So once you, like if you've used a magic loop or something to start a granny square or something like that, like a pinwheel from the inside out, this is basically the same thing. So just adapted for knitting. So you should not have any problem at all. It's if you crochet, you can do this super easily. Okay, so Magic Loop, I know lots of people swear by Magic Loop. I don't really have the best luck with it for starting lace like this, just because for me things get a little bit stretched out, but definitely if that is your jam, go for it. I'm not, anti-magic loop or anything like that, but believe me, if I were to show you, it would look like an utter mess and it would not be at all helpful. So I'm just going to beg off today. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. So let me kind of get this all. I'm going to use this yarn again. I always reuse my wool. So I am going to talk a little bit about going from a square into the wings. And that's basically where we are today. So I came up with a little tiny square to show you because the pattern is super big, and it's difficult to show what we're actually doing with that giant pattern, but this actually fits nicely under the camera. Okay, so this is basically what you're going to have when you start dividing up. So in the Peony Garden pattern, you have that circle in the middle, and then it turns into a square. And you're growing a spine. So let's pull the spine up here to take a look at this. So you grew 4 spines. And one thing I had to say again was I did say this the other day in the Zoom get together, which all of you are invited to, by the way. There's another one this Saturday. Um, this shawl looks so bad before it's blocked, but don't feel bad about it. It looks so, so bad. It's going to look terrible. Don't worry, it will look much better. Okay, so we've grown our spine and we've grown 4 spines, only knitting within the pattern so that your all the increases are kind of hidden in there. So let's see. Let me see. So so Marianne asked about the number of stitches. The Peony Garden starts with 12 stitches. So you would cast on 12 stitches using Emily Ocker instead, and so there would be 6 stitches on each of the 2 circular needles. And then, Barb, you were asking about the double points. Yes. I mean, especially double points can fall out, especially if they're heavier. So a lot of times it's just easier to have that smaller circular needle hanging down. And let me see. Okay. So Devora is saying that she's using Magic Loop. So you are awesome. Um, and that the key is using the most flexible cord. Yeah, that definitely, if you are a Magic Loop user, for instance, like this cord, even though it's flexible enough for me to knit regular projects, it makes it very difficult to use Magic Loop. So I totally agree. Um, the cord is key. Okay, so this is basically what we have here. Here's our little spine, and here's our little spine as well. So it's just sort of mimicking what we've got, even though the shawl is a lot more flowery. So this is basically what we have. So we're going to bind off these two here, and then these two are going to be saved, and those are going to turn into the wings. Okay, so let's take a look here. I'm just going to put this aside. I had it on my lap, and I'm dying of heat, even though it's not a very heavy shawl or anything. It's just like, oh, it's, that time of year. Okay, so let's grab this out here. Okay, so we are right here after chart E. Those charts were all worked in the round. And after chart E, that's where we're going to start and divide everything up. And the following charts after chart E are all worked flat, so worked back and forth. Okay, so doing chart E, you can see here the spine is, this is the spine right here. You can see this huge increase as this goes out. This is the leaf motif, and the spine is coming right up to the top. So usually when you do something in the round, your spine is going to be right at the beginning of your round. That's usually how they're set up. But because there's so many increases in this area, I chose instead to move the spine in so that it was easier to increase right along here. And then that moved the start of the round over here to the right and made it easier to hide the start of the round. So if you have this type of increases here and then decreases, it looks a little funky when you're going when you're knitting in the round, and you have to kind of keep moving your stitches back and forth between the end of the round and the beginning of the round. So once this chart is done, we're going to be slipping stitches. So you can either break your yarn or you can leave a long loop. If you leave a long loop, then make sure that the loop is long enough so that you can weave both of the ends in and not and it won't be too short for you to weave them in properly. Okay, so what we're going to do in the Peony Garden pattern is once chart E is finished, that we're going to move over past this center stitch right here. This is the spine stitch. So the spine stitch itself is going to stay with the wings. So there are going to be a couple more stitches saved for the wings, and then the rest of it is going to be bound off. Okay, so let's go over here and take a look at chart F. So you can see again, this is worked flat. This is the what you see is what you knit version. And that means that you're going to work each symbol exactly as you see it. So you're not, for instance, the knit is always a knit. And if you would like to see the texture, this is a what you see is what you get is on the back. So you can see what texture. Okay, so these little decrease markers here, let me show you what they are actually decreasing. So that is this right here. That's what that decrease looks like. And each of the picots, when this is bound off, is going to be, they're each going to be centered above one of these little motifs. So there's one centered right above here and centered above here. Okay. So because we are slipping stitches, that means that when you start using your yarn again, you're going to have a yarn over right at the beginning there. So that can be a little tricky. So let me show you. There are a couple of ways to do that. So remember I was saying each one of the spines is going to stay on with the wings. So when we're looking at my little square here, that spine is going to stay over here, and there's another spine on this other side here. It's going to stay over here. So these two are going to be wings, and these two are going to get bound off. Okay, so I'm going to slip the spine over, and I'm going to start here with a yarn over. So because you're just starting with a new yarn, it can be a little bit difficult. So one of my test knitters suggested, ooh, I have a little knot in here, making a slip knot. So she made a slip knot and stuck it onto her needle, and that was how she started with the yarn over. So you get this. That allowed her just to do that little yarn over here as it starts out, and it could stay on the needle much easier. And once that's done, you can just pop that on off. So you'd just be going along like this. So here's the yarn over. I am not going to, I'm not going to do the pattern that it shows. I'm just doing my little tiny piece here. So this does not reflect the chart. So here is my first side. This part is going to be bound off across here. And then I'm just going to work this other side. And remember, you are not working any spines except that spine at the bottom here. So, and this is for chart F. Okay, so I'm here. Here's another spine. That spine is going to go onto the other needle where I'm holding my stitches to knit later. Okay, so I am actually one of those people who is like picky about things being really even. So I actually have tried to do a yarn over at the end of a row, and let me tell you, it doesn't work. So over here, there is no yarn over. There's no yarn over at the end. The yarn over is right above here, right on that next row. So yeah, just don't even try that. If you are one of those people like I am who's like super conscious about things being even, don't even try it. It will eat you up. So, so let's try this. We can just do the yarn over here. So I'm just going to add my little yarn over at the beginning of that row and knit across here. This is garter stitch, and it's also garter stitch on the actual pattern itself. So then I'm going to bind off after this and show you how things will look. Okay. So let's just get across here. And at the end, you will see, here's where you would have that little yarn over and just put that back on. That stitch goes right back on. So now I do want to say that this is only for those of you who don't want to attach your yarn. So if you want to attach your yarn when you start to knit with it, you won't have this issue at all because the yarn will be attached to your knitting at the base and nothing will slip around. So this is just in case you don't want to attach it. Okay, so I'm just going to slip that back again. And again, this is a throwaway. It's gonna go away. So I'm just going to go along here and I will show you the bind off on the next row. And just doing this in a different color so that, oops, I have to put another in there. Just doing this in a different color so that you'll be able to see the difference. Okay. So the bind off is fairly straightforward. There is one thing I want to note that is when you're binding off and you come to, here's my yarn over by the way, and you come to these little 3 stitches in one here, don't make those bigger. You will think that you should make them bigger because they look just like little blips, but this is how big they are when they block out. So if you make them bigger, like if you make 5 stitches or something like that, they will be really long and they'll kind of look funny. So in my opinion, but let's see. So Marianne, you asked each side bind off will be an even number. Um, what was it? Let's see. There's 197 stitches before the bind off, before you bind off here. So there's an even number on either side of this center stitch here. I think that's what you mean. So yes, even number of stitches over here, even number of stitches over here, same number on either side, and then there's that one stitch in the middle. Okay, so I'm just gonna bind off across here, just simply with my little stretchy bind off. So what I'm doing is I am working a stitch. I start out with 2 stitches in pattern, and then as I'm going, I'm just adding another stitch as I go along. So 2 stitches, and then they come back over here to my left needle, and then I knit them together through the back loop. So it's a nice stretchy bind off. I've never known anybody to be able to bind off too tight with this. So, and I had a test knitter who tried. So, but she couldn't do it either. And she was a really tight binder offer. And she couldn't bind off too tight. So it's a great bind off and it looks really nice on all sorts of things and not just shawls. But it's particularly nice for shawls because using this bind off, you are able to block everything out. Okay, so here is a way to close up a yarn over. If you want to close up a yarn over, you can work it through the back loop And it basically becomes a make one then at that point. Okay, so into the center here, I'm going to do my little 3-stitch picot. So I'm going to knit 1 stitch into that origin stitch and keep that on my left needle, and then slip 2 back and knit 2 together through the back loop. So, and that stitch is still right there. I'm going to knit the 2nd stitch and do exactly the same thing. It's just going to go right back onto my needle again. And now for my 3rd stitch, I'm going to dip in there, get the 3rd stitch, and work those 2 together through the back loop. And now I'm just going to continue binding off. Let me show you here. Okay, so here's kind of what I meant before. It doesn't create that big of a picot, and as you're binding off, you might notice that it does not have as large a picot as it looked like it does in the pictures of the shawl, and you might want to add stitches, but don't do that, um, because you are going to pin this out, and the pinning it out will stretch it quite a bit. So I don't think you will like the a 5-stitch as much, or a 4-stitch. 3 stitches for the win. Okay, so let me just finish this. Going to get here to the end, and then we are going to talk about the next chart. Once these stitches are bound off. Okay, so usually when I design, I try not to have you break the yarn, but sometimes it just ends up being important to break the yarn. So, and this is one of those times. Okay, so here we are at the end here. And I'm just going to, oh, hang on. I knitted the tail in. I didn't want to do that. Let me pull this out. Okay. I was like, what was I doing? Okay. So here we go. Got that all together. Okay, so now this can come out. And that's a little bit loose, so you're just going to be weaving this in there. Alrighty. So this is pretty much what you're going to have so far after you do chart F. So you're going to have these 2 sides that are bound off on the bottom, and now you are going to make wings out of these 2 top edges. So let me make sure that I have everybody's questions. Okay, I think we're all good so far. Alrighty. So that is a representation of where you are after chart F. So we're going to go on to chart G, and I want to remind everybody, make sure that you are checking the pattern synopsis and that you don't miss anything in there. Okay, so at this point, after chart H, with the right side facing, we're going to reattach the yarn at the bind off edge to work chart G with stitches that have been held on your spare needles. Okay, so let's take a look here. You can see on chart G, you have these right here. You're going to be picking up stitches. So on my little sample here, there are only 2 garter ridges, but on yours, you will have 3 little garter ridges here from which to pick up stitches. So this first part right here, your stitches are going to come out of the side of chart F, right here where we were building up along here. So let's get another, we're getting very colorful today. So here is another bit of yarn. Okay, so I'm going to start here and I'm just going to pick up some stitches. I'm only going to pick up 2 stitches. So I'm just going to pick up some stitches from my bind off here. So there's one, and when it's kind of loose like that, I like to go through the back loop because I think it makes it look a little neater. Okay, so we have 2 stitches, and that is going to be your side. So now when we're working on the wings, this bound off area here is going to continue into a 3-stitch garter stitch edge all the way along here. So now that we're working this, this is going to be completely straight. So we're not going to be increasing along the side here. So you can see that that's completely straight there. And the only increases are going to happen in the center. Okay, so I'm just going to work across here. So no increases, no increases, no increases across here. So this chart is for both the wings that we're working across. Okay, so in the center here, we have that one spine stitch right here. So this spine stitch needs to turn into 2 edgings of 3 stitches. And on my little swatch, it's going to be 2 stitches, but on your shawl, it's going to be 3 stitches. And then the spine itself needs to mirror the other side. So where you see here that that spine is going to go straight up the side there, this spine needs to get needs to be doubled. So on each wing, it can go up the side on the other way. So the way to do that, we're going to increase in the middle here. So the first one is going to be a CDI. So that's a knit through the back loop of a stitch, yarn over, and then knit through the front loop. So I've just increased this one spine stitch here into 3. And now I'm going to continue on the other side. And at the end of this first row, I'm going to pick up some more stitches right at the end here off of my, my chart F representation. This is going to get a little loose because I didn't really tie any of these off, but don't worry, it will be fine. Okay, so here we are at the other side. So there's my spine that I left there, and now here is my side portion of chart F. And again, I'm going to be picking up stitches. I'm only going to pick up 2 along here because this is a much smaller representation than the actual chart or the actual shawl size. Okay, so this is what we have here across the top. So the only increases have been up here in the spine. Now I'm going to go back the other way, and you can see in the middle here that I'm going to be increasing again. Okay. So I'm just going to do those middle increases until I have enough stitches to continue on. So my edge stitches, my edging is still going to be worked in garter stitch, and the middle part I'm just doing in stockinette here. I think much easier to see this without the patterning. So we're just going to get into the center. Oops. Try not to drop any stitches. Okay. So you can see up here, this little center area here. So that very center stitch is going to be a knit back and front. And that is going to turn into 2 stitches. And those 2 stitches are going to be increased up here in the next row. So now the 2 stitches to either side here, those are going to be basically the spine like this. It's going to match this right here, which was the spine from one side, and over here that spine from the other side. So these 2 stitches now become, they're basically the spine doubled, and now that center is the one that's going to get worked up into the other edging. Okay, so I'm going to do my purl 1, and now I'm going to work a knit back and then front, and this is a yarn over in the middle here. So I'm going to work that through the back loop and then through the front loop. And on the other side, that's going to look like a couple of purl bumps. And you want it to look that way because this is going to turn into the edging. And now we're just going to continue to the end here. Okay. All right. So this is what we have so far. Working the wings. And we're growing those edgings. So let's get into the center again. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer anything that you would like. Okay, so let's get in here. Okay, so we're at this center right here, these 2 center stitches that are going to turn into my, my edging. And you can see they both have a knit back front. So knit into the back and then into the front. So that is one of them, and I'm just going to split this at this point because then we'll have one wing on one needle and one wing on the other. And here's my knit back and front over here. And now I can continue across here. So this is much smaller than the chart. On this chart, you can see there are more rows coming up, but we don't need to do those because I was just looking for this. So I have 2 stitches right here that are going to be my edging, and this on this wing, and 2 stitches over here that are going to be my edging on this wing. So I am going to show you my little twist here. Okay, so the twist is put here because when you separate stitches and go one way with one bunch and another way with the other bunch, they often pull apart and I think it looks kind of unsightly. So I always put just a little twist here to make sure that it holds together better and you don't have any gaping holes right there. So it really doesn't matter which way you do this twist. Any way you want to do it is fine as long as this stitch gets onto this side and this stitch gets onto that side. So it's just to hold that together. It's not a design element or anything like that. So it doesn't, so don't stress it or anything, just a little twist to keep the stitches from pulling apart and looking terrible. Okay, so here we are on the back side here, and I'm going to work across. I just want to get into the center here. Okay, so these two stitches in the center here are going to form the twist. I'm going to put them together right on my left needle. And to do the twist, I'm going to go around behind that first stitch, knit through the back loop of the second stitch, and both of those are still staying on the needle. And now I'm going to knit through that first stitch, and both of them are going to come off. So you can see there's just a little twist here, and when you block it out, you won't even notice it. But it will keep those stitches from kind of separating and gapping badly. Okay, so let's head off towards the end here. Okay, so that is basically what we have. That's the basic representation of where you're going to be after chart G. So these two are the wings. You kind of pull that tighter. Two wings, two sides bound off. So at this point, you're going to start working the wings. Oh, and I should have worked that and I should have knit that. Rather, I did knit it. I should have worked it in stockinette stitch, but you got the idea. Okay, so this part here is now going to be chart H. So chart H is going to be worked over just the first wing. So see, I shouldn't have admitted that. I should have just been like, well, I was just trying to show you where the charts ended. So I'm going to work across my half of my stitches that I have here. And the other half are going to stay on my other needle. So here's my last stitch here. Okay. So these other stitches here, those are just going to stay on a spare needle. So I'm just going to grab, well, I'll just leave them on this. And I can turn this around and they're just going to stay on whatever spare needle you want to keep them on. I know that some people have been just keeping them on the end of their needle, which is fine too. I have a set of stoppers for my my interchangeable needles, so I use those. And if I find them to be very handy, I'll just keep my cable in there. Okay. And then you can see each wing is going to grow from now. And once this wing is finished, you're just going to bind it off and you will start on the other wing. Okay, let's just get to right here. Okay. So this is the basic construction here. Here is chart F, chart G underneath the little pearl bump right here, and then starting on chart H for one of the wings. And you can see up here, it doesn't look obvious that you did a little twist. Let's show you that on the actual shawl. Show you what that looks like. So here is what it looks like on the shawl. You can see up at the top here, there's that little bit of a twist. So it looks more continuous and it's not gapping up at the top there. And here you can see better how on the wings, those stitches continue, the patterning continues, and then this spine splits off into two spines to go into the wings. Okay, so one more thing. I am an inveterate yarn weigher, so I always weigh to make sure that I will have enough yarn, or if I want to maybe add something to like some length to a pattern, maybe I can do that. On this, you probably won't be able to unless you're a super tight knitter. Okay, so once you are finished with chart G, I suggest weighing your yarn, and then you can figure out how you're going along. So weigh your yarn here, and then the other place to weigh it. Let me find the other place to weigh it is right after row 6 on chart H. So right here, figure out how much you take per repeat, and then you'll have a good idea whether you can add a repeat in or not. This little area up here, this 25 through 34 plus the bind off is about equal to one of the repeats because that bind off takes a little bit extra. So weigh a repeat, see how much you have, and if you want to add more or do something like that, then you'll know whether or not you're able to do that. So Marianne asks, will most fingering weight yarns be similar? Not necessarily. So let me transition back. So fingering weight yarns can vary greatly because of the different twists, the different way that they're spun, and also the different weight of the fiber. So it can be pretty dramatically different. And actually, I don't know if you watched my Summer of Lace series, but like, I think pretty much the whole first one of those talks about substituting yarns and the differences. So, as long as you want the information for your yarn and working with your knitting style. So you want to see just for you, like how much that will weigh and what you can add on later. So I have I think I have 4 yarn scales. I am really embarrassed to say. If you don't have one, I highly recommend getting one. They are so good, especially if you're afraid of playing yarn chicken and afraid of running out of yarn, like losing at yarn chicken. It will bring you so much peace of mind just to be able to plop your yarn down on the scale and figure out how much it weighs and how much it takes to finish. Highly, highly recommend. Let me see any other questions. Okay. Okay. So if anybody has any other questions, let me know. And let's see, beads. So Marianne asked if you could add beads. Absolutely. You can add beads. I suggest using a crochet hook to place them because if you pre-string them, you can damage the yarn and it can make it easier to pull out. But definitely add beads at points of things or wherever you want. And let's see. Okay. So Claire asked, any particular brand of scale? I have gotten a couple of different ones. Amazon has some of them that are used for people who do their own arrowheads, like arrow tips, and those tend to be really good because they have to be accurate and they're also really small. So they're so nice and small, like you can just stick them into your pocket. I have ended up like every time I go to recommend a particular brand, they're discontinued. So I would just go by the reviews on Amazon. And then Barb, oh, thank you. I am so glad that you like the details. I totally geek out on the little knitting details, so it makes me happy when when other people like them too. Let's see. Let's anywhere in the shawl. So, Marianne, anywhere you want to put them. Yeah, anywhere you want to put them, go for it. Knitter's choice. It's your shawl. As many or as few as you want. And then, hi, Peggy. Um, I haven't actually talked about being a specific place at the yarn crawl. It's the Sierra Nevada yarn crawl coming up. I am actually doing um, a pattern for Knits and Knots Minden. Um, so yeah, I don't know where I'll be, but I definitely want to say see you and say hi. So we have to figure that out. So anybody who's coming, I will probably go hang out somewhere or something so I can say hi to people. And let's see. Okay, so I think I've gotten everybody's questions. At any rate, everybody is invited to the Zooms if you want to come and hang out. And you can find those links in my Ravelry group and my Facebook group. And let's see. Um, yeah, let's see. Okay. Claire, you are so kind. Thank you. I'm so glad that you like the details. Sometimes I think I spend too much time on them. Anyway, so it makes me really happy when you like them. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming by. And I'm not sure, I will probably have another live just to show how to block this type of shawl, a V-shaped shawl like this. So stand by. I will send out a link for you. It's probably going to be in a couple of weeks. I'm probably going to skip a week. And then also, I wanted to say, coming up is my special skein knit along with a couple of new patterns. So if you subscribe to my newsletter, you will be able to get all that information and know everything first. And thank you so much for joining me today. It is always a pleasure hanging out with you guys, and I hope to see you on Zoom. So don't be a stranger, say hi, come on by and hang, and I will see you next time. Thank you for being here. Bye bye.